Nothing But the Words, episode number 55, Stealing Quotes from the Bible.
Welcome to Nothing But the Words, the podcast that gives you everything you need to know to write a phenomenal book. Now here's your host, your author coach, Candace L. Davis.
Hey there, and welcome to Nothing But the Words. I'm your author coach, Candace L. Davis. I hope your week is going well. Your 2021 is off to a good start. It's been a little nutty, but hopefully good in your world. And I hope you're consistently moving closer to your book goals. In this episode, I want to address an issue that I come across in a lot of self-published books. Many of my coaching clients and editing clients write books that have a spiritual bent. Many of those books are written from a Christian perspective, and as you might imagine, they often quote the Bible. If you are using principles from the Bible, it makes perfectly good sense that you would quote the text. That makes sense, and you should do it. But there are a couple of things many authors forget or don't know about. The first is that when you quote the Bible, you should always indicate which translation that quote came from. Don't assume people will know, and don't assume it doesn't make a difference, because it actually does. The same Bible verse can vary quite a bit from one translation to the other. If you read from multiple translations, you've seen that for yourself. A simple way to credit the right translation is to use the same translation for any verses you quote. So a couple of months ago, I actually edited a book written by a pastor, and she had 4 or 5 verses quoted in every chapter. It would have been much simpler for her if she had pulled them all from the same translation. Now I get it. Sometimes your favorite or most appropriate version of a Bible verse doesn't come from the same translation as the last verse you used. But if you can use the same translation, it will make your life easier. Then you can simply put a note at the beginning of the book, usually on the copyright page, that indicates all Bible quotes are from XYZ translation. Simple enough, right? If, however, you do want to use multiple translations, then each verse you quote should have the name or the abbreviation of the translation you used. For example, Matthew 19:26 is not sufficient. You will need to indicate Matthew 19:26 NIV or ESV or NLT or whatever translation you've used. It's important to make sure that you indicate the translation for a couple of reasons. Number one, it makes it easier for readers to confirm the accuracy of the verse and to read it in the larger context when you give them the translation. They can go to the translation you used. And online, as you probably know, you can go to websites that have all the translations on one site and you can make comparisons. So give them the translation to make any further research they want to do easier for them to do. And number two, the publisher of that translation needs to be properly credited in your book. Which brings us to the second thing many authors fail to do when they quote the Bible. And I've never seen anyone do this on purpose. They simply didn't know it was a requirement. They failed to give proper credit. It shocks a lot of people to know that every Bible translation is not in the public domain. That means you can't just use Bible text any way you want to use it in your book. The copyright for the King James Bible is actually owned by the British Crown. The Queen of England owns the King James Bible. Fortunately, in the United States at least, the King James translation is recognized as public domain material. So if you wanted to go out and publish a King James Bible, you could. But other translations are owned by their publishers. So for example, the NIV and Amplified Bible translations are both owned by the same publisher. And they have rules about how you can use their content. Yes, they have rules for how you can quote their translation of the Bible. Keep in mind that publishers paid for those translations to be done, so they have a financial investment. Fortunately, they know authors are going to quote the Bible, so they give fairly generous permissions. However, they do require that you give credit where it's due. Most Bible publishers ask that you include their copyright permission statement in your book, usually on your copyright page. Yes, you need to do this for every translation you quote. So if you pull verses from 6 or 7 different translations of the Bible, you need to include the copyright permission statement from each of the publishers of each translation. There's nothing difficult about it. Fortunately, it's a super easy process. Just go to the publisher's website and look for permissions. They know people quote from the Bible translations frequently, and so they've made that information publicly available so they don't have to keep answering the same question over and over. If you're not sure who the publisher is, if you have a physical Bible in your hands, you can look at the front of it. You can look at the spine. You will probably see the publisher's name in both places. If you don't have a physical Bible in your hands, maybe you've been using one of the Bible apps or a Bible website to find your verses. Very common. I've done it many times myself. You can do a search for NLT translation or Amplified Bible translation, whichever one you're using, and permissions. That will usually take you right to the publisher's permissions page where you can make sure you're following their guidelines. You can copy their permission statements and paste it in your manuscript. And when I say guidelines, often they will say things like, you cannot quote more than X number. It's usually a big number of verses in your book. So you want to make sure you're following their guidelines and then literally copy and paste their permission statement from their website into your manuscript. Even if you use the King James Version, which, as I mentioned, is considered to be in the public domain in the US, it's still best practice to credit that version on your copyright page. Now, when I share all this with my coaching clients, they tend to get a little annoyed. The coaching clients I have who practice the Christian faith in particular tend to get a little annoyed by the fact that the copyright for the Bible is owned by various companies. They look at it from a perspective that it's the Word of God and it should be available to everyone. But as I mentioned, these publishers have invested money, time, and effort in creating these translations. They are in business. And whether we like it or not, and personally I respect it, they own the copyright. So if you're quoting the Bible in your book once or 50 times, make sure you give credit to the proper publisher. That's all for this week, my friends. If you enjoyed this episode, follow me on Instagram at Candace L. Davis for more writing tips and inspiration. Thanks for listening to Nothing But the Words. I'm your author coach, Candace L. Davis, and I'll see you next time.